Welcome back, everybody. We are going to be doing the hammer versus hammer mini-me version, talking about the Hellcat Pro, the new offering from Springfield today, versus the Sig P365XL, which has been a favorite of a lot of people out there. Now, I know some of you out there may say, and it's going to happen in the comments, that it would have been more of a fair comparison to compare it to this or that. Well, what I can tell you is, these are the two that I own that I specifically were shopping for against one and another. And that is what many other people do, so these are the ones we're going to compare for today. Your chosen one may be in a future video. And before we get into all those goods, a huge shout out to Hidden Hybrid Holsters, longtime supporter of the channel, bringing you that sweet suede-backed Amish-made leather for your Big Iron 1911 and your Polymer Striker Fired Love. If you're in the need of a holster, check them out, see what they got at hiddenhybridholsters.com. We're going to change things up and do it a little bit backwards here for my channel. We're going to talk about that range performance and all that good stuff first, but for my spec people, it's okay. I'm going to have some elevator music for you, and you're going to get the full specs on both of these in just a couple of minutes. And we're going to start off with that Sig 365XL. Now, the Sig 365XL is not new to me, but that one is new to me. I finally broke down and went and bought one for the channel for all of the different comparisons. So I've had this one and some of my friends out to the range on multiple occasions now, so I've got a good overall feel for them. And I think a lot of you out there probably already know I like me some Sig, especially the X series, but I have not always been kind to Sig, specifically in the past when I've said things like Sig makes a great $500 gun for 800 bucks. But all joking aside, the 365XL is actually quite comfortable in the hand, even with double XL size gloves. So for those of you out there with bigger hands, this is one to still take a good solid look at. It just seems to fit in the pocket of my hand a lot better than things out there, even maybe ones that are a little bit bigger. So it's something about the angles and just the overall design of the X series, specifically grip modules. Now out on the range, that 15 round extended magazine is going to be a little bit more helpful when it comes to being able to hold on to this thing and control that recoil impulse. But even without it, I found it very manageable, and you can still run this thing. You're just not going to be running it like one of the big full-size hammers. Out there on the range, I find the trigger pretty good. So it's got that X series flat face trigger, not that curved kind of traditional P320 shoe. And I like flat face stuff more than anything. And I think most of you out there know that. And if you don't, well, now you know. But when it comes to Sig triggers specifically, I've always found them to be a little bit kind of flat feeling or almost like soft feeling, both on the break and on that reset as well. Now, the crazy thing with this one is it actually feels a lot more solid than some of the other ones. Now, if you've had that experience, let me know in the comments, but for some odd reason, this 365XL seems to have a much more positive break and reset, much more Glock-esque or M&P-esque, whereas many other SIGs I've tried in the 320 or 365 series just felt really soft and kind of left me like wanting more of a reset. Being able to hold on to this thing with that great grip texture that Sig has all the way wrapped around that grip is a lot easier than some other things that don't have that kind of sandpaper style texture that's all the way around that grip from the front to the sides and the back. All of that texture is going to help you control the recoil impulse, especially on these smaller style pistols. There is a single finger groove on the X style grip module, and I'm normally not a fan of finger grooves, but Sig has done it right. So it does help keep your hand very high up into the grip, and it does help me kind of lock my grip in and control that recoil impulse. And like I said, not being a fan of finger grooves on other pistols, I have to say that is very well done on the Sig 365XL. The mag release and the slide release are definitely usable out there when you're practicing those pocket reloads. You're just doing some reload drills for some training. The slide release is definitely solid. I will say the magazine release though, I kind of almost felt like maybe because of the size of my hands, it was a little bit difficult to get to, and there's no texture on it. So I found myself more than once kind of slipping a little bit. But again, that's mostly due to having larger hands. So if you're under that like XL size, probably not going to be an issue, but I really would have liked to have seen some texture so I could run those reload drills just a little bit more positively. As far as the overall angles, the X grip module really has me. That's what got me into liking SIGs, was the RXP-X carry and the RXP-X full. And I do have to say the angles and the texture and even that finger groove on the 365XL definitely pull me right in. It has a comfortable and extremely natural point of aim for me because I don't like having my wrist smashed all the way forward. I had some hand injuries, had some wrist injuries, and that's just not what my wrists want to do anymore. So that less aggressive grip angle definitely helps me out. Talking about the ammo, this thing chewed through all of it. Everything from my cheap Bell and Brass all the way up to that Spear Gold Dot Plus P 124 grain, which is my chosen carry ammo. Sometimes I will carry other stuff like that Hornady Critical Defense or Critical Duty, but quite honestly, the Spear Gold Dot stuff I'm just used to. I'm used to the feeling of it, how it reacts. Didn't have any cycling issues with any of that. No failure to extract, failure to feeds, failure to make that round go bang. Had zero problems when it came to actually cycling that ammunition. So what about that Pro piece, that new Hellcat Pro from the people over at Springfield? Now this one is got some good stuff going on with it, and it's just kind of like a larger version of the original Hellcat, I guess you could say, whereas the 365 is a smaller version of the 320X series. Rivals that Glock 19 on capacity, but yet smaller overall footprint, but still manageable to carry pretty much any fashion out there on the range. I've had that Hellcat Pro out on the range several times now, and I've actually been kind of EDCing it because I got a holster for it, just to kind of get a little bit more time on it, because I've got a lot more time on the SIGs and some of the other stuff that I own. Right up front, I will say, if you like the Hellcat, you're gonna love you some of the Hellcat Pro. Out on the range, this thing is very comfortable and it is very natural for me, much like that 365XL. I find the sandpaper style texture on the Hellcat Pro, especially being wrapped all the way around that grip. There's no gaps in it, and even some reference points up on the front of that frame to lock your thumbs into. Very, very nice to keep this thing under control because the Hellcats are known for being just a little bit more snappy than some of their other counterparts. That texture is actually kind of two sides of different pyramids. The taller ones are kind of flat topped, and then the shorter pyramids in that grip are actually more of a point. So when you're in the firing grip, it's actually going to lock into your hand a little bit better, or at least that's how Springfield describes it. And I will say that grip texture is probably only second to the M&P, which is super aggressive, and I love it. When comparing size, because that's always what we like to do, the Hellcat Pro is just the right size, especially for my people out there with XL and above style hands. You're gonna get a little bit more grip to hold on without being too big. So basically, for size comparison, this thing has the capacity of a 19 or the capacity of the 365XL with an extended magazine in it, but it's actually just a tiny bit longer than the 365 with the 12-round magazine and slightly shorter on the grip than the 365 with a 15-round magazine. So think about that for a minute and then comment down below if it was confusing. The trigger on the Hellcat Pro is a flat face style design, has a very nice defined wall, minimal creep, if much, that's going to be measurable to the human finger at all, solid brake, and a solid audible and tactile reset. I will say the reset on the Hellcat trigger is slightly better than the 365, even though that 365 feels better than other SIGs that I own. Operationally, the magazine release and the slide stop slide release, they're gonna do everything you need them to do. They feel quite good. You've got some texture on both of them, and they work well when doing those pocket reloads. And I'm really curious, are you practicing, or have you ever practiced your pocket reloads, whether it's, you know, free loose mag in the pocket, or if you're using something like a Neo mag, because I think that's pretty important. So let me know in the comments if you have, or if you failed to, and probably should start doing them. And that range performance out there with the ammunition, I had zero problems. Everything from the, I can't even remember the name, that was unpronounceable brass that I was using, all the way up to some Hornady Critical Duty that I ran through that Hellcat Pro. No problems cycling, no problems making the rounds go bang, no problem pulling the round, banging the round, stripping the round out of the chamber. Everything went exactly how it should have. So kind of comparing and contrasting these things out on the range, like what are the differences in the feeling, the function, and how that recoil is, because there is a little bit of a noticeable difference, but it's very minimal. Both are extremely controllable out there, especially when you put that additional magazine in that 365. They have good texture, they have good angles, they are very natural for me. The Hellcat is a tiny bit more snappy than the 365. I noticed that, and I think people have kind of just come to accept the fact that for some reason the Hellcat just pops a little bit more, but really is not gonna make that big of a difference out there. The one thing I will say when drawing the Hellcat Pro from concealment, I tend to over grab it because if it's more of a blocky design across the front of the pistol grip, and I tend to kind of over grab and then I have to readjust when I come out. And that's why I've been using it a little bit more on the range and carrying it a little bit more so I can kind of work myself into it, because that really comes down to a training issue. And honestly, between the two, as far as the recoil and running them and the controls and doing pocket reload drills, you're really splitting hairs to find one that's just a standout better than the other. They do separate though a little bit in the trigger category. The Hellcat Pro does have a little bit more of a tactile, audible reset, and it's definitely a far more firm and solid wall. So between the two out there, did I notice any issues? And I'm gonna say yes. So I had a pretty instant issue right away, which was kind of weird because I've had the 365 and the 365XL out on the range before, but I had never really run drills with them or done like, ready up drills or magazine exchanges, trying to practice. It was more of like a more comfortable, just kind of get the feeling of it. So when I went out there and started to actually do some things with this, I noticed right away I had a problem with the trigger guard right there. So if you will notice how fast it kind of slopes up and then kind of back and down right there. Well, what that caused for me was I was bringing my trigger finger off the slide and that frame ring coming down, my finger would almost ride that and I would bypass the trigger and come up in like that. It happened a few times, and yes, that is a training thing, but I've never had that problem with any micro or compact pistol before. And it really just comes down to how short, or I guess, it's not quite as tall, and how fast it slopes right here in the front, just making my finger kind of ride back like this a little bit. And that caused some issues out there, but again, training thing, something to pay attention to, because haven't had that with another one, and I'll have to do something to kind of get around that, which is probably going to come in the way of getting one of those aftermarket grip modules, which I think Icarus and I think Mayhem Machine are both sending one in, and quite honestly can't wait for that. And the funny thing about that trigger guard issue is my buddy Jonathan from Tactical Toolbox always talks about that when it comes to micros, how it's just too short and he catches his finger on it. Like I said, I've never had that problem. He has it with all of them, and that's why he hates micros. And to kind of show you how that went, here's a little video. This is one of the most uncomfortable guns I have ever shot. Like, getting my finger in that trigger guard is murder. Look at that. Ew. The way that it slopes up right there, I almost couldn't get my finger in there because of this. Look at that right there. I'm just like, Argh. All right, and now for my people that need those specs, a little bit of that elevator music. So knowing all of that stuff, what are the similarities and differences between these two should you be looking to grab one or the other? When it comes to the 365XL, 12 round flush fit or 15 round extended. Pro, 15 round flush fit magazines, which is plenty of Pez to dispense out on the range. Both are gonna have great texture when it comes to the grip. Both are gonna have good solid triggers depending on what you like. Both are gonna have front serrations, rear serrations. Both will have a nice, good high-vis front sight. Both are going to have optics mounts in there, but they are a little bit different. When it comes to the Sig, the rear sight, you lose it because that is connected to the plate when you put your optic on. When it comes to the Hellcat Pro, you don't lose it. You actually get to still use the factory iron sights depending on the height of the optic that you're putting on there. Something like the 507 series, 407 series still will, and the, I guess, Springfield kind of brand optic will be able to do it as well, and that's the one that is on there. Both of them are gonna have rails for your accessories out there, whether you want a lighter, a laser, or a little mini bayonet or something to stick on the end of it. And surprise, surprise, they're both gonna do exactly what you would expect of them out on the range. It's really gonna be what you like, maybe what feels just a little bit better in the hand, coming to the choice between the two. Size-wise, once you get the same capacity, I think you're really nitpicking, splitting hairs there when it comes to that much more grip, because quite honestly, the length and the width of them is pretty much a wash. And for my lefties out there, or my ambi folks, neither one of them is ambidextrous, so no need to even get in an argument about that, but both of them have better angles than a Glock. And because I have some of the most awesome viewers and subscribers out there on the YouTube platform, one of them was nice enough to send in an electronic wheeler gauge because they got tired of staring at my manual kind of old school one. So we're gonna do 3 pulls And we're gonna get to average them out between these so you can get an idea of what these things are gonna pull out on average. And if you caught that, yeah, I just said pull out, not pull at. So let's go ahead and check out the trigger pulls. All right, we're gonna go ahead and do some trigger pulls, and we're gonna do it with this awesome new Wheeler digital gauge that a viewer sent in. So huge thank you to you. I really appreciate that, because a few people were tired of looking at my mechanical gauge, even though it's tried and true. So we're gonna do our trigger pulls here, and let's go ahead and start with that 365. We're gonna do 3 pulls, and since this is electronic, it will actually average them out for us. So these trigger guards are super small here. So I'm gonna try and work this in here without disturbing it. All right, so that first one was 4 pounds and 10 ounces. So we'll enter that. All right. That one, 4 pounds and 10 ounces on the nose again. Enter that. Coolest thing in the world, being able to average these out, isn't it? Get on that shoe. All right, 4.2 on that one. And you're gonna see right there, I know it's a little bit glary right there, but that bottom number right there in the bottom left, 4.8, that's our overall average of 3 pulls. Let's move on to that Hellcat. See what we got here. We will turn this off, turn it back on, make sure everything's zeroed out. These trigger guards are small, but we'll get up in here. All right, 5.23, enter that one. Get our 3 done here. 6.4, that one popped up a little bit, enter that. It's tough to get this in there because those trigger guards are small. So 5.4 entered for an average of 5.91. There you go. And again, huge thank you to the viewer that sent that in. You're absolutely awesome. Well, that is just a lot of good stuff. You have nothing but tough decisions out there in the world today. And if you are looking for something in this size category, capacity category, I think you'd be doing yourself a disservice if you didn't take a good solid look at both of these and at least put them in the hand. If not, get a good opportunity to go to the range with a friend that has one, or even take the chance to rent one and see how good it feels. Make sure you guys sub up if you want to get on that email list. That's down below, as long as the links for everything we talked about here today in the video. And definitely you have to let me know in the comments which one you are already thinking about going with, or which one you have already chosen. You get out there on the range, have some fun. Remember, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready, even mini-me style. And I will see you on the next one.